one way I like to think of like the rapture story is, and this is not the only right way to think about it. As you mentioned, you can have your own rapture experience in deep meditation or on a boga looking in a mirror, right? But the rapture story of the end is nigh, this phase is coming to an end, there's going to be a great time of judgment, there's going to be a purgatory where we have a chance to reconcile and rectify the wickedness of our ways. And if so, we get some much better thing, heaven on earth or the reinstatement of the garden or whatever. Or if not, we get hell or death or some kind of bad thing. There's kind of a hard fork, and there's like a purgatory choice hard fork thing. I think we're facing something that is very much like that, kind of literally, which is we've been kind of shitty stewards of power for a long time. We've used our power to extinct other species, destroy ecosystems, destroy other cultures, and oppress people of lower classes. We've done some good stuff with it. We've been a very mixed bag, but the mixed bag that we are has used power destructively enough that, and it's continued to select for better coordination and construction, but also destruction capacities, that with the arms race of that continuing to exponential tech, if you continue to be equally shitty stewards of power with exponential tech, everything blows up. You ruin the planet and you have wars that nobody wins and can make it through. And so either we continue to be humans like the humans we have been, and the thing self-terminates, or we are getting so much power through the technology we've created, we are forced to become good stewards of that power so we don't destroy ourselves. And good stewards of that power means, what does it mean to be a good steward of power itself? And power means the ability to influence, affect, control others, right? Other humans and other non-human life. So what does it mean to be a good steward of those types of capacities? So what is the wisdom, love, values, prudence that would guide that? Either we have to step up into that kind of planetarily to safely steward the power, or we destroy ourselves with it. That's very much a rapture story. And I imagine like there's an atheistic version of it, which is just philosophically oriented people, social philosophers in the Bronze Age, at the end of a war, seeing all of the dead people that were killed at a much greater distance than before we had the whatever the new weapon was, the crossbows or the whatever thing. And a large area of desert that used to be forest because we got better axes and better saws and whatever as the technology was increasing. They could just sit there and think, we keep building better tech and we're about to move from the Bronze into the Iron Age, and we keep destroying nature and killing each other better with it. We don't get to do that forever. Like at a certain point, you can't destroy all the nature and kill, at that full scale. So this phase is coming to an end, and there's a wickedness of our ways and how we deal with power that has to be reconciled. And either we get it and we get this garden or not. Like, to me, that story, and very much like the Kali Yuga to Satyuga Hindu story or the end of the Mayan calendar, like they're just decent forecasting of the nature of continued technological power if it is driven by the lower angels of our nature. It self-terminates. And so if that power continues, it forces the higher angels of our nature to become the basis of culture, or we self-terminate. Like that's the forcing function.
Yep. And it, going back to what I was saying earlier, unfortunately, as much as I would like to hope and pray for and I still do, this very smooth transition, this awakening that happens without the necessity for massive disruption. And I still will hold that prayer, and I will, and I will add to that prayer with my own belief that is a possibility. And I don't know exactly how. It seems, from my understanding of what is most likely, is that there is going to need to be a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of pain that we probably feel, that actually propels us into taking these threats really seriously. Because climate change, it's a couple degrees hotter here. It's not, and it's like, yeah, okay, we kind of understand it, but until we run out of water, or until it's so hot that people are dying and like shit's getting really gnarly, are we really going to take it that seriously enough? And I hope so, and I pray so, and I pray that this happens gradually, and we wake up with great great speed and awareness that happens remarkably. And I think with the psychedelic renaissance, there are factors that are coming into play that can accelerate things beyond what the normal capacity is. But it just feels like, all right, we might need to prepare ourselves for a little bit of a bumpy road here that's actually necessary for us to make it through to the other side.
Let's think about this for a minute. We already just went through a year and a half or so of people largely being on lockdown, let alone what happened in Nigeria and so many other places, much more violently as a result of effects of COVID and COVID response, supply chain dynamics, whatever else. We talk about, are we going to need some pain to come in climate change? Well, it's probably the case that climate change was the cause of the droughts in Syria that made all the subsistence farmers who had been there for such a long time no longer able to farm. So they moved to the cities, that led to resource pressures, that led to the war there, that already pretty much destroyed what the quality of life in Syria was and almost brought about a fully armed conflict between the West and Russia, right on the border. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to talk about the planet getting so hot that no one can live on it to talk about heat waves in areas that destroy crops, in areas where there's food instability. So you have a huge population in India and in Bangladesh sharing watersheds with huge populations on either side, on China on one side, Pakistan on the other side. The water's running out of those watersheds. The heat waves in the summer are increasing. The supplies of food decreased during COVID because there was food shock that occurred because of not having fertilizer and things because of the shutdown of transportation. So the 50 plus Celsius heat waves that are anticipated over the next few summers, like, we already had enough refugees that nowhere wants refugees anymore. So what happens when the next chunk of refugees that are much larger in number than the previous ones came, because people don't just die peacefully, and you have very tense political fault lines? So the heat wave turns into human migration, turns into resource wars, can very easily turn into escalating large-scale wars. We're in a situation where being able to say we need some pain, like, it's already happening, basically. Depending upon where you are in the world, it's already happening.
So then we need greater awareness of the pain.
And it can escalate so fast that it goes from like, oh shit, that's really here, to, oh fuck, there's nothing we can do about it anymore. Now we're in large-scale war. And so we need greater awareness and greater action and responsibility coupled to that. And it's like, most people will either be stasis oriented or just personal pursuit oriented unless pain pushes growth. Teilhard de Chardin, the Catholic theologian who kind of, after Darwin, started incorporating evolutionary theory into Catholic theology. If you haven't read him, you'd really love Teilhard de Chardin. Mm-hmm. But he talked about, rather than a creator agent God relating to the creative impulse God that moves everything towards more elegantly ordered complexity and more capability and beauty, and that evolutionary process brought about humans that have enough complexity to think about the evolutionary process, to feel all about it, and to decide to consciously help mediate it, so that rather than just being parts of the whole, we could step up into being agents for wholeness itself. And what would it mean to be local agents for wholeness, consciously aware of all that? And he talked about what he called the lure of becoming. Rather than have to be pushed by pain, because otherwise we're stasis oriented, we understand the inexorability and beauty of evolution. And we are drawn to become more, and not just in service of self, but in service of all that we wouldn't exist without. And this is the interconnectivity part of what you were mentioning, is as soon as I realized that without plants, I don't exist, there's no atmosphere, I'm dead. So an idea of myself separate from plants is nonsense. And without soil, bacteria, and microorganisms, plants don't exist. So I can't even define myself without plants and bacteria and fungus in a cogent way, because I wouldn't exist. But also without all of the people who make all the shit that my life depends upon, where my identity actually is wrapped up in all this stuff. So I'm like, well, my sense of myself as a separate thing is only because I take for granted the rest of the universe I depend upon. But if I said that which is required for me to exist has to be included in my definition of self, then my impulse of becoming is bound to the support of all of that, right? Now, this is interesting because someone can have the mushroom experience of oneness, but not also have the cognitive model of how all that works. And together, both the experience and the understanding of it, and then the understanding of, okay, there is individuality, but even when we're talking about individuality as opposed to oneness, there's interconnectivity across the differences, right? There's things that are not me in the individual sense, but that I depend upon, and that create a world that either I don't exist without or that I want to see. So yeah, there's no question that pain can drive evolution, but we need to depend upon pain to drive it less and proactively be pursuing it in the awareness of the total imminent amount of pain that will come otherwise more. Mm-hmm. Because especially in a world where so many people are on painkillers and anti-anxiety meds and anti-emotional pain meds and whatever else, and all the other forms of distraction from their own inner pain through social media and porn and dating and whatever else it is, like pain doesn't even have the same effect. Right? We've done everything.
So we arrive at a place where we need to have a little bit of faith in this divine creative process that is going to awaken in a way that's stronger than what we've seen prior. And again, as I said, I think the psychedelic renaissance is potentially incalculable variable that can assist in this. But the optimism that, to go back to where we're coming from, the optimism is not a knowledge of exactly how it's going to go, but requires some faith. Like, there is this thing which is true, which is an interconnectedness and an understanding of that, and this creative drive to protect and support the whole, and the better nature that we have latent and nascent within all of us, and to have a bit of faith that can awaken, and potentially that, the awareness of some of the pain could actually facilitate this. Let's pray for as little as possible and as much on the affirmative side of the awakening of this divine creation impulse.
And it's interesting, one of the reasons that I think people take all of the painkillers, whether it's the SSRI version or the benzo version or the opiate version or the alcohol version, is because they don't pain as a signal that something is off. They don't know what to do about it, right? They don't feel like they can do anything about it. So just numbing it is the best thing, which then allows us to keep doing the fucked up thing. If I put my hand in the fire, the pain is an evolutionary signal for me to pull my hand out of the fire. If I take morphine, I can let my hand keep burning off. So much of the psychological pain we feel is because we're living in ways that are really not meaningful and not fulfilling. Mm-hmm. And so, as to be able to keep going and doing the cubicle job or whatever the thing is that I'm unfulfilled by, now I'm going to numb out the pain of the fact that my life sucks so that I can keep doing that thing. I want people, I want to actually feel the pain, but I want to be able to have a powered relationship to it, right? So I'm not just broken, but I'm taking it as a signal to then be able to say, what is this a signal that needs corrected? And then what agency do I have to be able to actually correct it and move in the right direction? And not just my individual pain, but also the collective pain. There's only so much I can do about the collective pain if I'm bypassing my own, right? Because I've got to actually be able to feel it. So what do I have to clean it up and fix and address in my own life to then be able to feel more of the larger pain, to then be able to do something about it? And I think this comes back to the sense of faith that you were talking about. You talk about faith and optimism in empowered ways. It's easy to give up on optimism and be negative or nihilistic. And I'm obviously not going to be part of any good solutions if I've done that, right? Nor will I have much any fulfillment. it's possible to have faith that doesn't require me to act, because like I have faith that some other institutions or other people or God or magic will fix it all. And that's also obviously not useful. And it's easy to say I'll have faith when someone shows me a solution that seems like it makes sense and tells me what I can do about it, which is like it's
not faith.
Consciousness of a child.
Yeah.
Right. That needs some parent authority figure to explain to them how to live. There's a certain kind of like, well, how would anyone ever come up with a solution to something that we don't know how to solve? Like, how does any inventor or innovator do it? Is that they have a faith that a solution exists before they know what it is. That doesn't have them just chill. It has them work their ass off to figure out what it is. Right. So there's a certain faith in possibility that orients you to be an agent of it, which orients you to actually work at things that you don't know exactly how to do, right? And so then you end up having a faith in the actual solutions as they're gaining traction, but you get those through a process of a more intangible faith, but that orients you to learning, discovery, and action.